Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brand Your Practice podcast, where you get to learn about marketing, growing, and managing your private practice. I'm Brent Stutzman, and today we're going to be talking about the three biggest challenges for practice owners transitioning to a group practice. And to help me do that is Kasey Compton. Welcome to the show, Kasey.
Hi, thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, great. But first, I wanted to say thank you. You put on a really great conference, the Meet Me in Kentucky conference, a few weeks back. So thank you for all your efforts. Have you recovered from the conference?
No. If you know what my natural country voice sounds like, you'll know that I'm still I get sick every year after the conference, so I'm still recovering from that.
Yeah, your body's just like pushing
Yeah,
all the adrenaline through. Is like, I feel nothing, and then afterwards,
yeah, you just crash. That's
yeah.
that's. I feel like an old papaw talking everywhere. So
Well, thank you for putting that on. In fact, my team, I brought up my employee and also a couple of my clients, practice owners, and the first in particular, kind of that business entrepreneurial kind of systems, hiring, all that stuff. Man, we had some really good conversations over
nice.
bourbon with that too. So it was really good.
Well, I mean, everything's better with bourbon.
Yeah, even
Yeah.
ice cream.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Perfect.
I had on your website, it's like your mission is to help practice owners find confidence and achieve entrepreneurial freedom through business systems. Give us a quick backstory and how you arrived at this juncture in your business journey.
I mean, well, everyone needs confidence, right? Like
Hmm.
that's we kind of need that to function and to grow and to continue to challenge ourselves. And there was a certain point in my own journey where I realized, oh, I don't really have any confidence. I'm kind of just fumbling through this, figuring it out as I go. People call it bootstrapping. I was doing all of those things, and it took a lot of mess ups, mistakes, a lot of hard lessons. I always tell my kids, like, I'm joking and just kind of fussing at them and saying, you're just going to be one of those kids that you're just going to have to learn it the hard way, knowing that that's also me. You can't really tell me anything. I just have to figure it out.
Yeah.
um, yeah, so a lot of mistakes, a lot of learning opportunities, and I realized that I kind of needed to start back from the beginning and reevaluate everything and look at the things that I was doing well and my personal strengths in comparison to the things that I really wasn't very good at and didn't have a whole lot of tolerance for. And so when I started when I started doing that, I realized that entrepreneurs go into private practice, or people go into private practice to be entrepreneurs and to have freedom. They want to create a life on their own terms. They want to have their own schedule. They want to make their own decisions. They want to be their own boss.
Mhm.
But what I noticed was happening with other people around me as well as myself is I felt more trapped by my business than I ever have in anything in my entire life. It was like it was just holding me hostage.
Mm.
And the only thing that I felt like was going to get me out of that was systems, and creating systems and processes that were, predictable, consistent, all of these things to give my business a fighting chance at surviving without me being the one calling all the shots all the time. So it's kind of how I ended up there. And from then, really focusing on that and starting doing consulting with other practices back in 2017, um, learning a lot, you know, by working with other people, and then working with Mike McAllowitz, and then writing Fix the Snacks for Healthcare. Um, just continued helping me learn and grow and see things differently. And so yeah, that's kind of how I ended up here.
Nice. And you're like, you're intact still, because I know, like, you know, because I know, like, you could just throw yourself into the business, and there's always more that you can do, and just go, 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 and but before you know it, you were just completely burned out and wiped
Mm-hmm.
out, and you look around, you're like, like, what is the waste? Like, I just laid waste to everything. And so that's really important when you start to build systems to, well, it gives you clarity and everyone else on your team clarity. And maybe this
Mhm.
is a good jumping point to kind of talk about, the three biggest challenges for practice owners transitioning to a group practice, because I imagine you
Mhm.
lived that yourself.
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%. Well, when we talked about this topic initially, I was just thinking, well, this is easy. I mean, well, it kind of is easy. There's so many challenges going from private solo to a group. Then when I started writing it out, I was like, oh, this isn't so easy. Like, there's actually a lot of challenges. It's really hard to boil it down to three.
Hmm.
Um, but I'll tell you the one I landed on as number one and why. Um, Most of us who are in private practice, even if we plan on moving into group practice one day or growing our business and scaling our business in some other way, I think we are so outcome driven and outcome focused as clinicians that we tend to skip over a lot of the things that are not like immediate gratification type things. So, for example, we want to do things that are going to require some kind of like actual action and like us getting out a calculator and doing math and making forms and, things that we can like see, touch, understand. But I think one of the biggest disservices that people experience when they transition into group practice is that whole vision component of like what they're trying to build. And I know for me, whenever I was doing this and I was pulling out the business plan, and I went online and I got a subscription to something called Live Plan because I thought maybe that'll be easier. Um, I started going through it and all of the things that required like numbers and policies and like all of these things I could do. Like that was something. But when it took me to the questions, the ones that in my head I was thinking, well, these are just generic, like mission, vision, values. How often have you heard that? And how dumb does that sound after you hear it 800,000 times? I would just skim over it. Like it was like, well, I mean, of course I'm just here to help people, duh.
Mhm.
Like it's a no-brainer. And so a lot of that I think I skipped over. And when I started bringing in more people to the group, they actually needed that. Like they needed that origin story. They needed
Mhm.
that foundation. They needed something to believe in and to get behind and to advocate for. And um, so I think that vision piece is a big one.
Yeah,
Um,
knowing your why, like what's your true north to
yeah.
kind of steer everything.
Right. Yeah. Because I think we don't understand it until we get into it, until we get deep into it, that why is the only thing that's going to keep us going at the worst and hardest and lowest points in that
Mhm.
group practice journey. Also, there's so many things that connect to that vision. Like, whenever sometimes I'll work with practice owners who have, let's say they started with a 1099 model and now they want to move to W2. And, one of the first questions I'll ask is, well, what kind of W2 model are you going to have? And they're just like, I don't know, W2. And I'm like, yeah, but there's all kinds of different ways to set up W2s. Like, what do you? And so, if we know ultimately what we are trying to build, are we trying to build a group that is very focused on collaboration, very focused on teamwork? Then how is that going to look when you're talking about payment and structure and financials? Are you just going to expect that they're all going to want to volunteer to do, like lunches and meetings? Like, how are you going to facilitate that culture? There's just so much to think about when it
Mm.
comes to vision that it really is tied back to those tangible things like policy and financials. But a lot of times we don't see it until we get really far into it.
So the big thing is, if you're going to be transitioning to a group, I mean, you should probably know this as a solo practitioner, as big as your vision.
Mhm.
Um, and do you ever have these? I've been having these. I've been thinking about this a little bit. Do you ever have any conversations around like, what is your enough?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hmm.
Because you could, the vision could be big, like, oh, multiple, why do you want to have multiple locations and all these there? But I wonder if, like, what is your, yeah, I'm curious of what are you hearing? What are the way you kind of think about, like, what is your enough? So like, if I get to this, then I'll be happy. If it's this
Hmm.
revenue, if this big a team or whatever it might be.
Hmm. 100%. And that's definitely part of the vision that I think people miss is what is your enough? And like they'll say, well, I'd like to have 3 locations and I'd like to have 50 employees. Okay, why? Like what are you trying to achieve here? Are you trying to make a certain amount of money? So it really just goes back to lifestyle congruence. How much money do you personally need to make in order for this to be worth it to you?
Hmm.
Because a lot of times what happens is people go from solo practice into group practice thinking, okay, as soon as I hire my second therapist, I'm going to make more money. Well, no, you're not. No, you're not. Not usually. And if you do, it's going to be short lived because that second therapist is going to have needs, and your systems have to change, and your overhead is going to change, and the amount of time that you're working in the practice is now going to change because you're now overseeing someone. And people within that vision often forget that their time has a price. And so if you're going to be in solo practice and make $100,000, and you think being in group practice is going to help you make $200,000 without doing any more work, you're wrong, at least in the beginning. Without the systems, you're going to probably work twice as much to get that up and going. And so,
Hmm.
how much is that time costing you? Like, what is the value? What's the price that you put on your time? And a lot of people don't realize that. And there is a spot between solo and group that we just call it the messy middle. Like, it's just there's a certain point where you're not going to make any more money. In fact, you're probably going to make less. And without a plan to get over that middle and to get over that hump and scale up, you're going to be doing a lot more work for the same amount of money. And so
Hmm.
I think, really like thinking all of that through and laying all of that out at one therapist. What's my revenue going to be? How much time is it going to take me? What's my overhead? At 2 therapists, and like really planning all of that out so you could see it's not just about, well, I'd like to have 50 employees, but I'd like to make $500,000. And so what's it going to take for you to get there? And
Hmm.
really having that kind of vision.
Yeah. Oh, that's really helpful. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
What's number 2 on your list?
Oh, well, that one's the fun one. Well, the systems.
Mm.
People don't realize how much more work it takes, and not just like physical work, but mental energy, emotional, like everything that it takes to bring on more therapists into the group, more providers into the group. And so what I like to do here is break out the practice into 5 systems. And so you have your front office, which usually consists of like your incoming calls, your intake, reception, medical records, whatever, however you want to figure that up. Your back office, which is your accounts payable, accounts receivable, your billing, things like that. Your marketing system, your intake system in particular, which a lot of people put that in front office. So we'll just say that goes in front office.
Okay.
Your HR, that's like your hiring, onboarding, retention of staff, and your clinical. So you have those five departments of your practice, and then you have to really think about what are the systems and processes that are going to be in each one of those that's going to keep this whole practice as efficient as possible. Because if you now have more therapists that are requiring your time, attention, energy, all of that, it's exhausting. And so you really have to have those systems in place. And a lot of times what I tell people is what worked for you will not work for 5 people. It's
Right.
you now have a totally separate, you have a different business. Um, and most of the time, what we do as individuals, as solo providers, we think we're like super efficient. And I remember I did. I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm writing referrals down on McDonald's receipts. I mean, I'm doing great. Um, it doesn't work when you have 5 and 10, 15, 20 therapists. So really just knowing that there's going to be a time where you're going to have to dedicate yourself to the business itself,
Hmm.
to really growing that business. People miss that.
I have a question on HR systems, if we
Hmm.
could drill in. So what should, um, as they're hiring new clinicians, what should they be thinking is like what kind of HR systems they need to be thinking about
Oh,
putting in place?
oh my gosh. Yes, man.
Okay.
Oh, this is like, if I could go back and right my wrongs, this would be something I would, if I had to do it over again, this would be the one thing that I would change immediately.
Mm,
And that is my HR system. So we bootstrapped our HR systems for a long time using, automations, using Google Forms, using all these things because we didn't want to pay the price for like a legitimate system like Bamboo HR, which is what we use now.
okay.
Big mistake. You don't need to develop a system for HR as you grow. You need to choose a system that's already created, um, and you need to grow into it. You don't need to constantly be growing out of things and changing them because one, therapists don't like change, people don't like change, people don't like miscommunication, and people like consistency. Choosing something, and I don't get anything from Bamboo HR. We literally just converted to it and I love it and it's amazing and I wish I would have done it 9 years ago. Um,
Wow.
but looking at something, whether it's that or something else, that keeps everything in one place in terms of your hiring process, you want that as automated as possible. That's the first interaction you get with a new employee is through that hiring, onboarding. That's where you develop that rapport, much like you do a client.
Yes.
And they have to buy into your vision. And having like a messy he said she said, I emailed her, I didn't get a response, I did this, I did that, whatever, I didn't know about that, like you can't write me up because you didn't tell me, like those kinds of things, those can all be avoided. I'm a huge advocate for that HR system. I would do this with any business I start from this point forward. 100%. I
And
don't know if that
Bamboo's a
answers.
platform, so it's like they have a system that you just leverage and customize for yourself.
Exactly.
And those include what? Obviously, like
Hmm.
paperwork,
Yep.
like
Hmm.
contracts or something like
Yep.
that, or
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah, so you can post jobs, you can schedule interviews, you can send job offers, you can send contracts, you can send I-9s, you can send W-4s, you can send all the paperwork component. People can clock in, people can clock out. There's a widget platform for onboarding. They can complete all their online trainings through there. They can request time off, their time off accrues. They can request vacation. They can put in bereavement days. You can set performance goals. You can monitor performance goals. You can send announcements to the team. There's company directories. There's like chain of commands.
Mhm.
I mean, literally everything that you could need. And what I say about the hiring and HR system is it really affects every other system in the whole business.
Hmm.
And so you got to get that right, or it's going to be really hard to focus on anything else. You want your therapist to be comfortable and confident in their employment with you so that they can do what they need to do, which is focus on the clients. And I would say that the majority of our turnover, and it also tracks like turnover rates and all that for staff, the majority of our turnover has been based on poor communication. It's someone not getting what they need from whoever is supposed to be managing them.
Hmm.
Um, And so that I think that this is going to be a way to improve that across the
Yeah.
board.
That's really helpful because there's, a lot of people have talked about, and I thank you for sharing that because a lot of people have talked about, marketing systems, your intake
Hmm.
systems of things, but the HR is sort of like the sleeping giant that,
Yeah.
that nobody really talking and kind of get some insight into that. So you're right. Like, and, you know, I think centralizing and using software to automate is really
Hmm.
powerful because I always think practices that are run well, you have your systems, but there's usually a piece of software behind it to
Hmm.
automate it.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that's like the icing on the cake,
mhm.
that just makes it even more efficient.
Right. And it removes you out of the process a lot of the ways.
Exactly.
So,
Hmm. Hmm.
well, great. Well, thank you. Before we get into point number 3, I actually want to share a software that could actually automate some systems. Before we go on, I'll remind our listeners about a new resource you can take advantage of today, and that's called TheraSAS. Many private practices have an inefficient system for capturing, qualifying, and converting new client leads. They struggle to keep up with the demand of new appointment requests, and whether they are using Post-it notes, a notebook, or some sort of spreadsheet, potential clients often fall through the cracks. And even worse, many new client leads are often left waiting for a response. In their moment of need, they reach out for help and they rarely hear back from the practice. And that's why I designed TheraSAS. Now, TheraSAS is a powerful HIPAA-compliant software to organize all new client appointment requests using website forms, automation, and HIPAA-compliant messaging, so you can instantly connect and qualify client leads, easily manage wait lists, and track every step of your intake process with real-time analytics. It's said that the riches are in the niches and the fortune is in the follow-up. TheraSAS was specifically designed for the follow-up process. It has empowered solo practice owners to grow quickly and group practice owners to supercharge their intake teams. Getting started is simple. Step 1, just go to therasas.com and sign up for a demo and a free trial. The second step is if you decide that TheraSAS will grow your practice, we'll sign you up. TheraSAS takes 1 hour to implement and 1 hour to train your intake team. Step 3, you can confidently know that new clients are being communicated with and not falling through the cracks. Being known as a practice that provides the best care starts at the very beginning when someone reaches out for help. You've worked too hard to build your practice to have client leads go unanswered and fall through the cracks. Level up your intake process with TheraSAS to capture, qualify, and convert new client leads. See if TheraSAS is a good fit for you today. Just go to therasas.com and schedule a demo call. All right, so go ahead, Kasey. Let's jump into the final.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of my biggest pet peeves is the follow through of all of the things, and it's actually my number 3. Um,
Synergy.
yeah, it's actually my number 3. I'm just calling it accountability. And here's the thing: is like you can have the greatest systems, the greatest processes, you can do all that, but if someone is not making sure that the people are doing the work and that we are delivering on the commitments that we're making to not only our clients but to our employees, and going back to that vision and that brand promise, then what are we doing? I mean, we're only going to, in the long term, create a poor reputation for ourselves as a provider.
Yeah.
And so I think accountability across the board is something that people struggle with. I know I do. It's um, it's not necessarily something that I don't notice. Like I can tell because I'm looking at outcomes, so I can tell if someone is not doing their job. But to have those one-on-one conversations about, hey, look, here's the goal and this is what your performance is indicating and you're really not meeting those standards, that's hard for me to do. That's hard for me to have those conversations with people on the daily. It's exhausting. It doesn't bring me any kind of energy. It sucks the life out of me. It's something that I know that it's not sustainable for me to do. um, the problem is no one on my team is good at it either. Um, and so finding people or being able to train people that can really spot accountability and make sure that everyone is rowing in that same direction is 100% necessary. And the thing that saves me, honestly, is even though I'm terrible at accountability, because what I tend to do is I am kind of passive about it. Like, I know someone's not doing their job, but I don't really have proof. I just see that they're
Mm.
not, and so I let it go, and then I'll let it go, and I'll let it go. And then I get to the point where I can't let it go anymore. And then I'm really irritated. And then I just, it's just like,
Ah!
ugh. Yeah. Um, but having platforms, automations, technology, systems that support you in holding other people accountable and turns things it from like an emotional perspective into just a very black and white makes it easier for me. And talking about Bamboo HR, for me in the role that I play in my business right now, that is what I needed,
Mm.
because now it's very black and white. Here's the performance goal. Here's the outcome. Did you meet that goal? Did you not? What are we going to do about it? It takes all of the feelings out of it. Now, I think every system, one of our systems is intake and client care, and that's the foundation of our practice. And so we are very, very hyper vigilant to that system.
Mm.
And I think that having accountability and having a platform like you shared in the sponsor break is perfect, because you're not having to manually count things. It's right there in a dashboard that tells you this is what's outstanding. Like, this is what needs to be done. This is what's not been done. And to me, that's accountability. And it also provides a system so that then you can coach your team, like, okay, look, here's what this looks like. This is showing we had 25 calls and half of them were converted. um, the other half of them we couldn't get a hold of, or something like that. And so prompting your team to be able to say, okay, what are we going to do about this? Well, what can we do? And problem solving, that's going to take so much pressure off of the practice owner.
Hmm.
I think a lot of times we try to do so much, and we need to let the systems bear the brunt of the work.
Yeah, okay. So lots of things here I wanted
Mhm,
to talk about. So yeah, the whole idea behind Therasas, because um, we if we were to ask like how many leads that we get,
mhm,
or it's like we didn't have a dashboard to kind
mhm.
of like just get real time analytics on that. How many
Yeah.
conversions did we get? Well, first of all, a lot of intake coordinators or teams or whatever, it's like paper and pencil. Maybe it's a Google sheet
Mhm,
or something, and
mhm.
it's still like really unorganized and
Yeah, lots of
um,
room for error.
lots of room for error, and there's no
Yeah,
transparency into the process. So you can't
right.
actually see emails or text messages or phone calls that are happening in
Mhm,
that. And so, yeah, so there we have like this unified inbox. It's awesome. So there's transparency, like, so there's accountability,
mhm.
and it doesn't take hours for the practice owner to be able to look and ask questions. So
Exactly.
as it relates to what are you tracking as far as the clinicians go? So you have your measurement and accountability. What are you
Mhm,
saying? Okay, these are the things every week or every month we need to have a conversation around. You talk
mhm,
about performance. Is that like
mhm.
a regular kind of weekly check-in, monthly? What are you asking? What are you checking?
That's a really good question. So the quick answer is, so marketing is one of our core systems.
Hmm.
Every system in the practice has a system operator. And so, for example, marketing is my marketing coordinator, Emily. Um, and she has a goal that is directly related to that position, to her, to, marketing. Well, marketing's job is to get new leads into our funnel. Okay, so if we're imagining a funnel, marketing's job is to get the leads. Our intake people, so we call them client care, our client care team, their job is conversion. Marketing is lead generation, client care is conversion.
It's like sales,
Right.
essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to get them on the books.
Hmm.
And then it moves into our clinical. who then has to keep them in that funnel and make sure that the goals are being addressed and, whatever. And then when they discharge and they come out of that funnel, it goes back to client care to ensure satisfaction. And so within that, we are tracking leads generated, and I'm measuring performance for my marketing coordinator. That's how I measure her performance. Conversions of the generated leads. Then I'm also, when it gets down into the clinical, I am measuring utilization. And so two things with our therapist that we measure is utilization, which for us means the number of clients on your caseload versus how many of those clients are you seeing on a regular weekly basis. So if they have 10 clients on their caseload and they only saw 5 of them, their utilization is 50%. We want it to be at 80. And so basically, if we are getting a lead, we're converting the lead, we're expecting the clinician to see the lead. We also track how many sessions it takes for us to become profitable. And unfortunately, our worst case profitable number, because we accept Medicaid and all these crazy things, takes about 7 sessions.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So if that therapist does not see that client for 7 sessions, we don't even consider them retained. So we're shooting for 12 sessions to be retained. Those are the main things that we look at. And then we meet with clinicians every week. They have a dashboard. They have their own personal dashboard that shows their utilization numbers and their productivity. So therapists, they focus on those 2 things. Productivity is just, are they seeing the number of clients that they're supposed to see? It's really just numbers. It's not based on anything else. And that pretty much works for us. It doesn't have to be a ton of things that we track. We just try to track the umbrella things.
Now, can I ask a follow-up question on that? For the follow-up, so once they discharge and they go, you say they go back to client care, is that just sort of like, I don't know, a wellness check? I don't know how to ask you. It's sort of like, hey, how did this go for you? That type of thing?
Yes. What was your experience like? Would you recommend us to a friend or family member? That's also where we can go back and double check that chart and make sure there's a discharge summary, that all of the things are, there and available. We also check their contact information at that point, because what we do is we keep them on an internal marketing series, like an email marketing campaign. And so when they're moved to discharge, then they go into a different batch for like nurture based type marketing. So they may get an email at, like 2 weeks post or something like that, saying, fill out this survey. And then we'll put them back on a nurture campaign in maybe 3 months or 6 months that says, how's everything going? If you need a maintenance session, click this link. We'll get you set back up. Things like that.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Helps quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. Nurture. Yeah. Yeah. Because they usually come back. Usually
they always come back.
Yeah. There's usually something there.
And we keep them on that list. That way, if we have new therapists that come on that have certain areas of specialty and whatnot, they'll still get those emails unless they opt out. And we try to send one a month.
Yeah. Okay, cool. What do you use to send emails with?
We used to use MailerLite. I know I'm country and it sounds like beer, but mailer. But now it integrates within our EHR. So we used Advanced MD. And we are able to do all of that through our EHR, and that makes it a little easier.
Got it. Okay. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know you could do that with Advanced MD.
Yeah, it makes it easier to target certain clients because you can tag them,
segment them out.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'd love to talk more about systems sometime.
Sure.
It was really
Anytime.
great.
I love talking about it.
Well, where can people find more about you?
Yeah, just follow us on social media. Hi, Kasey Compton. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. We're working on a dang TikTok. Don't even ask. Oh,
Well, you're reaching the Chinese. I get it. Like you
I
want
guess.
to.
It's an extension of the podcast. So we did start a new podcast called Back Porch Bestie, and it's not a business podcast. So it's a podcast for those who are searching for joy in life and whatever that may be. So check us out there. That's been really fun. We've had a lot of good success out of that podcast so far. So you can always find me on Apple or Spotify.
Great. And you have your own podcast. Is
Yeah,
that the best? Is that
yeah.
the back porch
Back Porch
bestie?
Bestie. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one you were talking about earlier. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Got
Mm-hmm.
it. Well,
That's
thank you
it.
so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank
Well,
you.
all right, listeners, all the content on the Brand Your Practice website, podcast, and other media reflects my own opinions and should not be taken as legal advice, financial advice, or investment advice. Please seek out the guidance of a professionally trained and licensed individual before making any decisions. Some links in the descriptions may be affiliate links. All right, folks, thanks for listening. If you found the conversation useful, subscribe to the podcast, and please join me again on the next time on the Brand Your Practice podcast.